Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Empowering Student Voice and Building Leadership through the Student Ambassador Program, which is intended for middle school administrators. It's my honor to introduce an extraordinary educator and leader, Miss Bonnie Spears. With over 20 years of dedicated service to students, teachers, and families, Miss Spears has built a remarkable career rooted in a passion for education and a commitment to making a lasting impact. Her journey began as a middle school teacher, where she spent 12 inspiring years fostering a love for learning, encouraging critical thinking, and building meaningful relationships with her students. Following her time in the classroom, she stepped into leadership as an assistant principal at pre-K through eighth grade, where for 6 years, she focused on cultivating a positive school culture, mentoring teachers, and ensuring every student felt supported and valued. For the past 3 to 5 years, Ms. Spears has served as principal at Drakes Creek Middle School and Warren County Schools. In this role, she has successfully implemented programs that enhance academic achievement, support social emotional learning, and promote equity and inclusion. Her dedication to creating environments where all students can thrive is a testament to her unwavering belief in the transformative power of education. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Bonnie Spears as passionate visionary leader in education.
Thank you so much. I do want to make just one correction on that 3 to 5 years, and that's not Mrs. Hibbard. That is, I have been in as an administrator for this is going on. I guess this is going on my fourth year as a principal, and then I had that experience as an assistant principal before. So this is actually, I have been at Drakes Creek Middle School now for an entire year. I would like to introduce to Mr. Ben Jones. He is on here as well. He is my assistant principal. He'll jump in as well to kind of add to what I discussed, because he has been here for over 12 years now, serving Drakes Creek Middle School. And so all of you all on here know that how important it is to have your leadership team with you and behind you. And 110%, he has helped me to make this transition and help to support some of the visions that we have that we wanted to work together. And so I feel like we have accomplished a whole lot in a year. It seems like it's been a quick year when I think about last January start to this January start. And so, as you all know, and I know you guys are in different roles that are on this presentation today, but when you look at what does it mean to create those opportunities for students? Anybody in here know who the smartest people in the building are? You can unmute or join in at any time on that one. So I understand that you're probably working as well today. So I've always felt like that when you think about the smartest people in the building teaching the content, of course, that would be the teachers, right? So the guiding practice, though, as a teacher, I knew my students were far more smarter than I ever could have been. In the classroom, they found ways around work. They found ways to get out of trouble. And so when you think about sometimes who has the best ideas of what a school should look like, it's your students. They're the ones that are actively engaging in school each day, working, to make their own accomplishments. And so one of the first things that we started with when I started in January, and then just with previous experiences that I've had, is I wanted to get out and meet the students, see what the student body was like here. And one thing I've learned in my career is that anywhere you go, students are always students. And so they never change. They have different needs, they have different personalities, but anywhere you go in any school and you visit and talk with students, it's the same. It's what they're interested in, what their concerns are, what they may need at the time. But one of the things that I do want to share with you about our school is These are just a few things on the screen that we feel like are very important to our building, to Drakes Creek, and with our students as well. Our vision and mission, this is our Engage and Connect for Success. We look at making sure that students have choice in class, that they're working on that sense of audience. Warren County is where Drakes Creek is located. And so all of our elementary schools in Warren County are part of the Leader in Me program. And so our middle schools, students have that experience as well in participating in that. But it has to look a little bit differently sometimes for a middle school. And when you think about that, when they move out of their feeder schools into our middle schools, we just have them for 2 short years before we send them to the high school. And so we have a huge responsibility to make sure that we get them prepared for that next stage and that next move to go to the high school for the next 4 years. So some of the things that the students had talked about previously to create this mission statement were these things that are listed on the screen. And through surveys and different assessments, different surveys that students have taken, whether it was through KSA with the Quality of School and Climate survey. We also take the Studer survey, which I'll show some of that here in just a moment. And then we give a PBIS survey as well to our students. And we do that pretty early on to gauge just kind of what our temperature is. Because that's a huge part of culture in our building, is making sure that we're meeting those needs early and those concerns early for students. And so that's something that has been given for, I know, Mr. Jones, for 5 or 6 years in a row, the data shows that from PBS. Is that correct?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of that data, it shows, we go back and we look at our data for years past and years ahead. And you want me to talk about that survey a little bit? Or
yeah, give them the background.
It's like an engaging survey. It talks about, like, what do they like to do? Do they have someone in the building, like an adult, that they can go to? It also talks about, do they have friends? Anything special about them, what their favorite subject is. It's a big part of building the culture of what goes on in our school.
Thank you. So when we were putting this presentation together, we wanted to make sure that we hit a few points with you all so that you understand about our school in particular. And so when you look at our school snapshot, we range anywhere. This year, our numbers are quite a bit lower. We normally have around 750. Last year, combined, we had around almost 760 students. So that just fluctuates with those incoming 7th grade classes that we get from our feeder schools. And so we are right at 62% economically disadvantaged students that we serve. That fluctuates around 59 to 65%, just depending on our student population. You can see our ethnic minority, our language, our LEP students, the students that we have EL monitored, our GT students. So that's kind of just the makeup. And in 2023, Drakes Creek was, they were awarded the National Blue Ribbon. And then, when you look at our population, we're more than a score, is what I want to establish here with this. But our students do well on KSA, but that has a lot to do with multiple facets in this building. It is our teachers, but it's also that student voice part. With the work of our guidance counselors, with our administrators, with our leadership team, to make that all kind of that all encompassing need of what our students need. One thing, and this kind of leads us into the next few slides. One of the things, when you look at our score of our Quality of School and Climate Safety Survey, we're in that higher end range from the state, but as a principal or as a leader in your building, and even if you're a teacher leader, it's still not where you want it to be. You can always do better, right? And so when you look at that upper end of that score, that 75 to 100, that's like the mark. That's one of those challenges that I take it as a challenge accepted. Let's do better. And so when we were talking about, of course, we didn't get those results until the fall, but we also take the student survey. And what that does, students will take that in a couple of weeks. So you get those results in February. And when you look at that, that's kind of where I based my starting point when I started in January. And looking at those surveys last year, and then also the PBI survey that they had taken in the fall. So we kind of did a comparative of looking at that. And the top things, just to point out, that students were concerned on, that I felt like when you correlated it and you looked at the questions across, and this is one of the things that we talked about with our leadership team, we decided to kind of focus in on this and see what were our next steps, what could we do to change some of these. So one of the ones that scored the lowest, there's a question that's very similar on all three of the surveys that we give our students, is I like going to school every day. So I had to drill down on that one, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a moment, what students said about that when we talked with them about what that meant. It didn't mean that they don't necessarily like school, just sometimes they don't feel like going to school, or they have an NTI day when it's not a snow day, or and then other days, like other students said they gave specific reasons of why it is that they don't enjoy school. So one of the other areas that we scored that was kind of concerning to me is that students felt like that they had opportunities other than class to be successful in or to participate in. So we have a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet is called awards, recognitions, and extracurricular or clubs, whatever, instructional thing, non-instructional items that students are a part of. That's an important part in our building that I want to make sure to let you know that that's not something in my career that I have necessarily looked at in my background from an administrator's point of view. If you've never done anything like that, and I did not share that document in this presentation, but that's something I can go back and upload to the grid just so you can kind of see what that looks like. And so what is very neat to look at is when you do look at your PBIS data and you do look at maybe your minors and your majors, but you also you look at maybe counselor request forms or bullying, if you have incidents of bullying that are reported on your bullying forms. What's very interesting to see is sometimes the students that don't have anything extra, or they're not necessarily a part of a club, or they play sports, or any of those extra things that we do. Sometimes that's the students that you'll see kind of have some data that may not be positive data that you want to look at. And so looking at that as a whole, as a school, it is a lot of work to do, to go down and figure that out. But I feel like that is some important work that our leadership team, our instructional team worked on to do to make sure that we kind of keep up with that. And so that does change from year to year because students add things. But that was a concern that was on the survey. And then when we spoke to students, they in our K-6 feeder systems, they have clubs or club days, and that's a little bit differently than like Beta or KYA or academic team, those types of clubs or extracurricular or the things that we participate with sports. They're talking about like chess club, art club, those types of things that they really missed coming into middle school. And so that was one of the things that Mr. Jones and we discussed about, because we were at the time in the spring, we were looking at the master schedule, and master schedule that runs your school. It lets your teachers know what they're going to be teaching. That's how you go into scheduling students, and we do try to protect our core time as much as possible. So our guidance counselor actually worked on a club day schedule that is 8 periods long, and I have shared that, and you'll see that in just a moment too. And so it was doable to still have all of your classes, but also to be able to build in some of that club time. And that was one of the things that we felt like we need to address as quick as possible. So I guess the other thing that I want to point out, one of the other survey data points is that students, one of the lower scores is that they felt like that students were nice to each other. That was a lower score on all three, worded a little bit differently, but the same correlation with that we talked about. So when we started this and we started talking about it in February of last year, of what could we do to make sure that we were creating an environment to where students were engaged. They felt like they were a part of our school. They were leaders. We were tying what they knew about Leader in Me into our building. And then also the collaboration part. When you have diversity in your building and you have different populations that you need to service, a lot of times when you walk into the lunchroom, that's where you see the different groups of students and how they group with each other. And how, who they hang out with at lunch may not be necessarily who they're in class with. And so that was where we kind of started having those conversations, table conversations during lunch, because that's a great way to see all of your students every day that are in the building that haven't left or are at school, and to have those conversations, because the hallway, sometimes you just have about 3 minutes and they've got to get to class. So the conversations kind of with students and getting to see some of this began in the cafeteria last spring semester. And the conversations that I was able to have with students, even individually, if it was in the hallway or in my office or in the cafeteria, one of the things that we heard over and over, and our PBIS team as well, when we were working with our interventionists to have these conversations with students, is that they felt like they didn't know how to hold themselves. They didn't know how to help peers adhere to the rules or responsibilities of what we expect here in our building. And so they wanted to help. Their big thing is they wanted to create more positivity in our building collaboratively and with each other, and to have opportunities to see students that they don't normally interact with or to see. And when you think about role models in the building, our 8th graders, they've been in middle school for a year, and we relied a lot on them. We have morning meeting every meeting, and just to kind of give you an idea of that, that's from 7 to 7:15 after they finish breakfast. It's where we make announcements. We remind them of our three big our 3 R's of the day: respect, responsible, ready to learn. That's what we live by. We feel like everything that we do in the building, if we're doing that, then there's not any problem with anything else that we're doing. And so we relied on our 8th graders to kind of train our 7th graders for morning meeting and what that looks like. And, the 8th graders, when you talk to them about that, they don't even realize that that's what they're doing when they go in there. And so so these were just some conversations that we had in the spring. And then what we decided the other thing is in elementary school, our elementary feeder schools, they are Leader in Me lighthouses. And some have reached different levels this year. They were recognized and awarded some of those things. They have a leadership team, a student leadership team. So before 2020, there were a lot of things that we did. And kind of, I think after that point, we've gotten back into a routine, but some of the things were forgotten about, and not necessarily on purpose, just the change of how things were done in school. And then you found some things that were better opportunities for students. But I think one of the things, and I think Mr. Jones would agree with me on this one too, is that that was one of the opportunities students had before. And so when you go back and you look at past data and student responses to different surveys, those scores were higher, and those were because there was a leadership team or an ambassador grouping. They didn't call them ambassadors, but they were like a lighthouse leadership team is what it was, and they had different jobs around school. So we talked about that and what that would look like to kind of start bringing that back. So, and I will. I'm going to share this, and it's the application. So all of the links that I've got added on here, you guys should have access to. And if not, it'll email me and I'll give you access. I know sometimes when it's part of your school system, different schools have things locked down differently in Google. So I don't mind to hit the share button if you don't have it. And all of these are copies and they're not originals. So you can feel free to make a copy and use this on your own as well. I do want to take just a minute to pause and just see if you've got any questions so far about just the process of how we got to where we are, or anything about our school before I move on. I get to talking because I'm really excited about this. This is one of my favorite things to work on with students, is to get that student voice piece in our school. So I do tend to, I can talk about it, but if you've got questions, please unmute and ask as we go through. Okay. All right. So I'm going to show you our Gator Ambassador application. And can you see that on the screen? Is it showing? Okay. So this was something that, this was the first part of starting this and getting this in. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that we did when we talked to students, and we polled just different, it wasn't necessarily students that have been in trouble, but we tried to poll all students in what they would like to see. They wanted a leadership team. So instead of calling it a leadership team, we wanted to move it into that ambassador range to where we could build up different committees. And we asked students what types of things they would like to be a part of. And so on this form, you'll notice that we have several committees. The Principals Advisory Committee, we call that the PAC. The Gator PAC's what it's called at Drakes Creek. Everything's Gator oriented. And so that is I have a group of 11 students that I chose. So they filled this out, and then they went through a different process to be a part of the Principals Advisory Committee. And with that, they do more work in 30 minutes than I can get done in 8 hours. So we meet after school. We had lunch together yesterday. But I don't know, I've lost my efficiency in life. I can do it after school. I can do it in the evenings. It's just, you got to be out and be visible, right? And you've got other things to be a part of when you're in school. So 30 minutes after school, these kids can flat get some things done. And not just my committee, but all of the committees that we have. We've got our winter dance planning. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. Students, last year, the adults did all the work. We wear ourselves out. Kids can do anything, and they can do a much better job than adults can. So that trust and belief, and knowing that they can do that, and letting them do it. And they're going to make some mistakes. They're going to spell some things wrong, but that's okay. We'll go back and edit. And that's one of the things that we're teaching them too. So those life skills are tied into this. And I do want to say too, with this group, these students were chosen based off of this application. And then we had some guidelines that we set up for afterwards. So these are not all our GT students. They're not all the students that may have a couple of write-ups. It's a good mix to represent who and what our school is. And then, like I said, so this is just the basic application. You should have access to this. We wanted to make sure to know which school they come in from, because that they do different things at their buildings. We want to make sure to kind of look and see that we got a good mix, and if we didn't, to send that back out. So our eighth graders now, our current eighth graders, they filled this application out before the end of the year, because we wanted to go ahead and get them started and get them in helping us during the summer when we did our Gator Camp for our sixth graders coming in. And then our seventh graders filled it out when school started in seventh grade. We're changing that a little bit this year, so we'll have a full, our committees will be filled before summer and before the end of the year, just so that those sixth graders have something to look forward to when they come into seventh grade. And then they'll also help over the summer to plan different events as well. And so they feel this is it's a simple form, but it takes time, it shows effort, it builds that leadership capacity. And some of the things that were on these applications were absolutely amazing. We were going to start the group off, I was going to cap 25 Gator ambassadors. T-shirts are expensive. But we have 97 Gator ambassadors that are on different committees of these different committees. So anyone that took the time to fill out an application, because they took the time to fill it out, it was really hard to choose. And I let my guidance counselor talk me into that. She's like, we can't turn these, she was advocating, we've got to, if they want to be a part of this, we need to. So we did. And as a leader, sometimes you think, how is she going to manage this? How am I going to manage this? How are we going to manage this? It's been easy. And they meet at different times, and they don't all have to meet at once, because the different committees that they're on, they have different responsibilities. So it falls in place at different times of the year. And then, okay, so you've got access to that. And then the other thing is just the application to be on the Principal's Advisory Committee. Now, these students, they have been a part of my site-based council meeting. They have an opportunity to go and to present at one of our, we have district admin meetings once a month. They're on the calendar to go and present during that time. Any big events that we host, they will, if for visitors that come in, if they want to know a little bit about Drakes Creek Middle School and what it stands for, they're in charge of creating a presentation. They run that first 10 or 15 minutes of introductions. They do a lot more than that, but I would rather listen to kids talk any day, no offense, than adults. And watch them present. So they have some different ideas. So the form, and I probably need to make sure, you got the next. So there it is. If you click the next button, it pulls in and it shows you kind of the different components of this and the different questions. After they fill this out, I call them in for an interview and I ask them the exact same questions, just to make sure that that they know what's involved and then what they stand for and what they want to be a part of. After that, so we got our applications, we got our seventh graders that were going in to be eighth graders. They started, we scheduled some of them to come in during the summer, and then when we we waited, I think it was the third week of school. We had a welcome meeting for all of the ambassadors. We met one morning. We just shared some of the expectations. I included this slide so that you could see what that looks like. A lot of the things we've already gone over, but if you wanted to make a copy of it to develop something like this, that you'd have a copy of it. So from there, when we had our welcome meeting, then we put them to work. And this was just one of the things that I wanted to make sure and include on there. This is part of that. But they chose which event they wanted to be on. And when you think about student voice, I know Dr. Lou Young spoke this morning about the new accountability system. Our district is currently working on Portrait of a Learner, and we're working to create that this school year so that we have that starting next school year. And I am familiar with that coming from a different district. We had started that process. And so all of the things that are included in this ambassador program that we're offering to make those connections through PBIS, through Leader in Me, and then just what we need for our building and to make sure that we're supporting students. This is going to be a huge component to that Portrait of a Learner. And I didn't put the connection together really. I thought about it, but listening to her, this is other opportunities for students to show what they can do and to show their learning. And that's one of the things I truly believe in is, a test doesn't normally always show what a student knows, but watching them, and that's what I have seen more than anything, are the students that we have involved in these different committees. Behavior has improved. Attitudes about learning has improved. If they were having difficulty turning in assignments, it's the expectations that you set. Teachers set them in the classroom and they set the bar. But when you give them something that they feel like they're being successful at and that they can do, if they've not necessarily had a part of something before, this adds, and I don't want to say another check to what that big sheet that we have of students, but this adds another piece to how they feel about themselves and being a part of something. And I think that's what a school is a lot of, more than anything. Yes, we are here to make sure that students learn and grow in academics, but school is so much more than that. And if we don't have the other part of it, then it's really hard to get those academics into place sometimes. Everybody wants to feel like they're a part of something. So that kind of ties that student voice piece. We're still working on that and how to that responsiveness in our building with our different populations in the building. And so that's still a work in progress. So I don't know that I have all the answers for that yet. We're still working on that to make sure that we engage and that we're responsive as far as our school culture goes with all of our different populations. So the second thing that students talked about, they're proud of their school. They're proud to be a Gator. They know that they're going to be a Gator when they move to high school as well. We kept the same mascot as far as that goes to their high school. And so I think one of the things students with the surveys said is that they just wish kids would behave. Can they not just listen to the teacher? Can they not just keep their hands to themselves in the hallway? Mr. Jones hears it all the time. What do they say all the time, Mr. Jones?
I was just playing around. I mean, that's the number one thing that I get all the time. I hear, I was just playing around. And then my question to them is, when did we tell you to play around in the hallways or in class or anything? And they're like, never. And I said, well, that's why we're a number one school. We're going to offer you a first-class education, and that's what we expect you to do. What you do with that is on you. Don't keep others from being able to learn. So I preach that every day. I preach the 3 R's. I preach education and be responsible. And parents like that too, because when you share that with the kids and then you share it to the parents, and then they're like, well, that's very much of life. And so that goes a long way. It really helps because it becomes part of the life and the culture of the school. It's been deep. It was here before I got here. It's been here while I'm here. Miss Spears she's continued to hang on to it because she thinks it's important, because it is. I think it's a big part of life and just doing things right. So, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I was just playing around. That's what we hear. Yeah, just playing around. That's what we'll say that from time to time, laughing. I was just playing around. So yeah, I know you've heard that too. So that's one of the things, but not everybody wants to play around in the hallway. There are some students that want to make sure they get from point A to point B. So those are some of the things that students have worked on through our PBIS committee, which is part of our ambassador program, of how to promote that. And through that, and you can see my slides, like as far as like school ownership, these are just some different things that students have created or been a part of to promote those positive behaviors. And so there have been some presentations on our news show about what's appropriate hallway behavior, how, just different little things that students have said, hey, can we do this? Can we be on the news show for the week? Can we create something? We've noticed this is a problem. The restrooms, keeping the restrooms clean. They did a little presentation about cleanliness. They tied it to science. They tied it to health. They tied it to sickness. They got our attendance numbers. They created this great little presentation and presented it on the news show. And since we've been back from Christmas, granted, we didn't miss as much school as some of the other schools had, but there has been a difference in the calls to the restroom for cleanups. And so it's a reoccurring segment on the news show, but hopefully it'll keep up. We've been to school for 2 weeks, so, and not 2 full weeks, but just something that was kind of funny that they come to you and they're like, can we do it? And I'm like, we're like, go for it. Make sure it's appropriate. So, and then of course the teachers watch it to make sure that it is, but just a few things that students have completed under that school ownership component of what we wanted to accomplish. And then as far as beyond PBIS, so this was what I was talking about with the grid that we have with what students are a part of. This was one of the ideas that we talked about that was important to students to create. So I put the club schedule up for you all to see. Our language arts classes are blocked, but everybody else has 6 periods. And so this brings in an 8th period, and it lends itself to where our language arts classes are just a single period. And today is actually a club day. And so we have a club schedule listed. We have over 25 different clubs that students, you can see the number of responses. I put that slide. So out of students were asked to respond to what they would like to see, what club they would like to see. And so on the slide, it shows, I just wanted to make sure and show you, it's 387 responses. Now, some of them were the same clubs, but 387 responses to different things they wanted to see. And so the first club day we had to postpone it. The first one was going to be, we have one a month except December. Next December is crazy. It's hard to fit anything else into December. And so we were supposed to start in September. We had to postpone it. And so we started in October of this year with our clubs. And clubs ranged from, we have 3 cooking clubs. That was one of the most popular clubs, and we work with our cafeteria. We go into the cafeteria. They allow us to use. They work together. They collaborate with the cafeteria staff. I'll just say that. And so there are, I think we have 125 students are in that cooking club, and then we have walking club. We have film club, chess club, board game club, coloring. There's 25 clubs that students come up with that that teachers made happen, and that we were able to work out that club schedule.
Miss Spears, I have
Yeah.
1 minute warning. I'm so sorry. I hated to interrupt. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. So just looking at sustainability and future goals, one of the things that these are a few things that students have done that they have completed this school year or will complete. They are going to plan.
Hey, everybody, 1 minute left for these breakout spaces. Thanks.
Okay. They're going to plan on the TED Talks for the new students and parents. And then that was the end of the presentation. So I almost got your questions. But if you've got any, please reach out to me. I've got my information on the next slide, Mr. Jones as well. And thanks for listening to me talk for 45 or 50 minutes today.